Michigan, 1998. A gray autumn sky draped the city like a shroud of sorrow. Emily Reynolds pulled her worn jacket tighter as she watched her twin daughters, Olivia and Sofía, playing in the small park a few blocks from their apartment. At 5 years old, the girls were physically identical, yet as different in personality as day and night. Olivia, the elder by a mere 7 minutes, was the ever-watchful protector, her brown hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. Sofía, the dreamer, shared the same brown hair, though hers was always slightly tousled, as if the wind itself were her constant playmate. "5 more minutes, girls," Emily called out, glancing at her watch. Her shift at the factory started in an hour, and she still had to drop the girls with Mrs. Winters, the elderly woman downstairs who watched them while she worked. Being a single mother in Detroit was a constant struggle, especially since Richard, the girl's father, had vanished the moment he learned she was pregnant. Emily's focus shifted for a moment when her phone rang. It was her supervisor asking if she could come in early. As she answered, she kept her eyes on the swing set where Olivia was pushing Sofía. It was only a minute, perhaps less. When she looked up again, the swing was swaying, empty. "Olivia? Sofía?" Her voice, initially calm, quickly morphed into a desperate shriek that echoed through the park. "Olivia! Sofía!" Emily sprinted to the swings, then to the slides, checking behind every tree, every bush. Nothing. The twins had vanished as if the earth had swallowed them whole. A man walking his dog saw her frantic search. "Is something wrong, ma'am?" "My daughters, my twins, they were right here a minute ago," Emily stammered, the air seeming to abandon her lungs. Within 30 minutes, the park was swarming with police. Emily recounted the story again and again, showing them the last photo she had of the girls, taken on their birthday just a month before. Both were smiling in identical pale pink dresses, hugging each other as if they were one person. They were playing on the swing. I was distracted by a phone call for a minute, maybe less. When I looked back, they were gone, she explained through a fresh wave of tears. Detective Marcus Rivera, a man with a stern face but kind eyes, noted every detail. "Anyone who might want to harm you, Mrs. Reynolds. The girl's father, perhaps?" Emily shook her head. "Richard doesn't even know them. He left before they were born." The hours bled into days, the days into weeks. The image of Olivia and Sofía appeared on posters all over the city, on local news broadcasts, and even briefly on a national program about missing persons. Emily quit her job, spent all her savings on private investigators who found absolutely nothing. 6 months after the disappearance, Detective Rivera visited her at her now neglected apartment, its walls covered with maps, photos, and theories. "Emily, we need to talk," he said softly, declining the coffee she offered. "The department is reallocating resources. The case will remain open, but—" "You're shelving it," she interrupted, her voice a hollow rasp that didn't sound like her own. "You're giving up on my daughters." Rivera looked down, unable to deny it. Missing children cases were the hardest, and after 6 months without a single concrete lead, the odds plummeted dramatically. "I won't stop looking," he added, trying to offer some comfort. "In my own time, I'll keep checking every tip." But Emily barely heard him. Something inside her had broken that day in the park, and another piece was shattering now. Yet in the midst of that unbearable pain, a fierce determination was born. "I will find them," she whispered, more to herself than to Rivera. "I don't care how long it takes." The first year was the hardest. Emily sold nearly everything she owned and moved into an even smaller apartment. She took 2 jobs, waitressing by day and cleaning offices by night. Every cent she didn't need to survive went into a fund to continue the search. She hired another private investigator, then another when the first gave up. Every night before succumbing to the few hours of sleep her body allowed, she would look at the last drawing Olivia had made. 3 stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Mommy, Libby, and Sophie, her daughter had written in childish script. On the back, Sophia had added stars and a moon because, she'd said, we have to draw the night too because it always comes back. The years bled into one another. Premature silver threads began to weave their way through Emily's hair. The photographs of the twins remained frozen in time, 2 5-year-old girls smiling, unaware of the fate that awaited them. Emily constantly wondered what they looked like now. Were they still identical? Had their tastes diverged? Did they remember anything of their old life? Of her? In 2005, 7 years after they vanished, Emily faced another devastating blow. Detective Rivera died of a heart attack. He was the only officer who still occasionally reviewed the case, the only one who called her on significant dates to assure her he hadn't forgotten Olivia and Sofía. Standing at his funeral in the pouring rain, Emily felt more alone than ever. It was then she began to widen her search. She was no longer confined to Detroit or even Michigan. Every vacation, every day off was spent driving to neighboring cities, then to nearby states. She visited schools, parks, shopping malls, anywhere 2 identical girls, now teenagers, might be. She was often mistaken for an unhinged woman, the way she intensely studied every pair of sisters she saw, how she would sometimes get too close, pull out a faded photograph and ask, "Have you seen them? They're my daughters." Then one day in 2010, 12 years after that fateful day in the park, Emily was driving down a rural highway in Minnesota. She had no specific reason to be there other than to keep expanding the radius of her search. It was a Sunday morning, and she felt a profound weariness, both physical and emotional. As she passed through a small town called Oak Brook, something caught her eye. She couldn't have explained what it was. Perhaps it was the small white wooden church by the side of the road, its modest steeple pointing toward the heavens. Or maybe it was the sign out front that read, "Sunday service, all are welcome." Emily had never been particularly religious. After the girls disappeared, whatever faith she might have had evaporated. But on this day, for some inexplicable reason, she pulled her worn-out car to a stop in front of the church. Parishioners were entering in small groups, greeting each other warmly. Entire families, elderly people leaning on canes, teenagers who clearly wished they were anywhere else. "I'll just go in for a moment," she told herself. "Rest for a bit and then be on my way." What Emily didn't know, as she climbed the wooden steps of that rural church, was that her life was about to change forever. That fate, or perhaps something else entirely, had guided her to this exact place at this exact moment after 12 long years of relentless searching. The inside of the Oak Brook Church was just as Emily had imagined. Polished wooden pews, simple stained glass windows filtering the morning light, and a hand-carved pulpit that showed decades of use. The service had already begun, so she slipped quietly into the back pew, trying to remain unnoticed. A man in his 50s stood at the pulpit. He was tall and sturdily built, with black hair peppered with gray and a neatly trimmed beard. He wore an immaculate black suit with a white clerical collar that contrasted sharply with his demeanor. His eyes, a piercing blue, scanned the congregation as he spoke of forgiveness and obedience, his deep voice filling every corner of the sanctuary. "That's Pastor William Blackwood," an elderly woman next to Emily whispered, noticing her curiosity. "Been with us nearly 13 years, he turned this church from a dying building into a true spiritual refuge." Emily nodded politely, though the words barely registered. Her mind, as always, drifted to her daughters. Had they been raised in a religious home? Did they attend services like this every Sunday? The unanswered questions were a part of the daily torture she endured. And now, Pastor Blackwood announced, interrupting her thoughts. Our youth choir will grace us with amazing grace for us, led by my beloved daughters Rachel and Rebecca. Emily's head snapped up. As with any mention of sisters or twins, her heart gave a painful lurch. From the side, a group of teenagers arranged themselves into formation. At the front, two identical girls about 17 years old stepped forward. For Emily Reynolds, the world simply stopped turning. The twins had brown hair, one with a perfect ponytail, the other with slightly rebellious wisps framing her face. Their faces, though matured by adolescence, held the same features Emily had memorized and dreamed of for 12 agonizing years. The way the one with the ponytail protectively placed a hand on her sister's shoulder, a gesture Olivia had made 1,000 times with Sofía. Emily gripped the pew in front of her, her knuckles turning white. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The choir began to sing, but she could only hear the roar of her own blood in her ears. It's them, she whispered so quietly that not even the old woman beside her could hear. My God, it's my girls. As if in a trance, Emily rose to her feet. Her legs moved of their own accord, carrying her down the center aisle toward the front of the church. A few parishioners shot her disapproving looks for interrupting the hymn, but she saw nothing but the two girls singing at the front. As she drew closer, she could make out details that confirmed the impossible. The tiny birthmark just below the left ear that they both shared, the way the neater twin, Olivia, stood just a little straighter, just as she always had. Pastor Blackwood noticed her approach, his brow furrowed in annoyance. With a subtle but firm gesture, he signaled a large man in the front row to intercept her. But Emily was already too close, her eyes locked on the teenagers who were now looking back at her in confusion. Olivia, Emily said, her voice cracking. Sofía. The twins exchanged bewildered glances. The choir faltered to a stop, leaving an awkward silence hanging in the air. Ma'am, I think you're mistaken, said the twin with the neat hair, her voice unfamiliar yet still an echo of her daughter's childish babble. I'm Rachel Blackwood, and this is my sister Rebecca. The large man finally reached Emily, taking her firmly by the arm. Ma'am, please come with me. You're disrupting the service. No! They're my daughters! Emily cried, trying to pull away, her voice rising in desperation. Olivia and Sofía Reynolds! They disappeared 12 years ago in Detroit! A murmur rippled through the congregation. Pastor Blackwood descended quickly from the pulpit, his face a mask of professional concern, but Emily saw something else flicker in his eyes. Alarm? Fear? Please, everyone, remain calm, he said with authority. Seems this poor woman is confused. Frank, Tom, please escort her outside. Rachel, Rebecca, continue with the next hymn. The twins moved to obey, but Emily saw the one with the wilder hair, the one who looked so much like her Sofía, stare at her with an unreadable expression. Was it curiosity, or was it recognition? I am not confused, Emily shouted as the two men dragged her toward the door. They're my girls, look at them. They have the birthmark below their left ear. Olivia always protects Sofía by putting her hand on her shoulder, just like Rachel just did with Rebecca. Some of the parishioners began to whisper among themselves, and Emily sensed she had planted a seed of doubt. The pastor noticed it too because his tone hardened. This woman clearly needs professional help. Please do not indulge her delusions. Rachel and Rebecca were born in this community. You've all watched them grow up. But Emily had spent 12 years searching. She would not give up now. With a surge of strength born from pure desperation, she broke free from her captors and rushed toward the twins, pulling the worn photograph from her purse. Look, this is you! Olivia, Sofía! I'm Mommy! Don't you remember me? The teenagers stared at the photograph, their expressions a mixture of confusion and something deeper. The one called Rebecca instinctively reached for the picture, but her sister stopped her. Dad said we should keep singing, Rachel muttered, casting a fearful glance toward Pastor Blackwood. It was that small moment, that split second of doubt in Rebecca's eyes, that confirmed everything for Emily. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't wrong. These were her daughters. "Someone call the police!" a man shouted from the pews. "I already did," a woman called back, holding her cell phone. "They'll be here in minutes." Pastor Blackwood maintained his composure, though Emily could see beads of sweat forming on his brow. "Ma'am, I suggest you leave before the police arrive. You are causing a disturbance in a house of God." "I'm not leaving without my daughters," Emily replied, planting her feet firmly in front of the twins. "And when the police get here, I'm going to ask them to investigate how two girls who look exactly like my missing daughters just happened to appear in your church right after they vanished." A tense silence fell over the congregation. The pastor's face remained serene, but his eyes burned with something Emily recognized immediately: the panic of a cornered man. "Rachel, Rebecca, go to the house," he commanded, his voice now laced with steel. "This woman is obviously unwell." "No, they're not going anywhere," Emily countered, positioning herself protectively in front of the twins. "Not until the police get here and we can sort this out." For the first time, the teenagers looked truly frightened, not of Emily, but of the situation, of the conflict between the two adults who both claimed authority over them. "Father, what's happening?" Rachel asked, her voice small and vulnerable. Pastor Blackwood ignored the question, his eyes locked on Emily. "You have no idea what you're doing," he said, his voice low, meant only for her. "These girls have a stable life here. Are you going to destroy that with your fantasies?" Emily held his gaze. "They are not fantasies. They are my daughters, and you know it." In the distance, the wail of sirens grew closer. All color drained from Pastor Blackwood's face, and for an instant, Emily saw the real man behind the pious facade, calculating, cold, and terrified. The parishioners stood frozen, caught in the drama unfolding before them, unable to reconcile the image of their respected pastor with the accusations leveled by this strange woman. The sirens cut out in front of the church. Heavy footsteps echoed on the porch, and then two police officers entered, their hands resting cautiously near their belts. "What's going on here?" the older officer asked, his eyes quickly assessing the tense scene. And so, inside a small, rural Minnesota church, 12 years of relentless searching culminated in a single moment, one that would forever change the lives of everyone present. "These are my daughters," Emily declared, her voice firm but trembling. "They disappeared 12 years ago in Detroit. Their names are Olivia and Sofía Reynolds, not Rachel and Rebecca Blackwood." The senior officer, whose nameplate identified him as Sergeant Daniels, looked at Emily with a mixture of skepticism and compassion. He had dealt with enough disturbed people to recognize the signs, yet something in this woman's conviction gave him pause. "Ma'am, those are very serious accusations," he said carefully. "Do you have any proof?" Emily produced the worn photograph again. "Look at their faces, the birthmark under the left ear that they both share. They vanished on October 17th, 1998. The case is on file in Detroit. Detective Marcus Rivera." "No, Detective Rivera passed away," Pastor Blackwood interjected, his voice regaining its confidence. "And this woman is obviously confused. My daughters were born right here, at Oak Brook Community Hospital. I have their birth certificates." "Forgeries," Emily shot back. "How do you explain the resemblance, the identical birthmark?" The second officer, younger and more alert, was watching the twins closely. "Girls, have you ever seen this woman before?" The teenagers shook their heads, but Emily noticed that Rebecca, her Sofía, did so with less conviction. "Never," Rachel answered firmly. "Our father has raised us by himself ever since our mother died, giving birth to us." "You see?" the pastor insisted, placing his hands protectively on the twins' shoulders. This woman is projecting her own tragedy onto my family. It's understandable, but it is unacceptable. Sergeant Daniels seemed to be leaning in the pastor's favor, but his partner continued to study the situation with a critical eye. "Sergeant," the young officer said, "I think we should take this down to the station, run the paperwork, make a few calls to Detroit." "Officer Collins, I don't think it's necessary to disrupt this family's Sunday based on the claims of a stranger," Daniels replied, clearly uncomfortable with confronting a respected community figure. Emily felt her chance slipping away. 12 years of searching couldn't end like this, with a small-town cop dismissing her claim. In a desperate act, she addressed the twins directly. "Sofía," she said, looking intensely at Rebecca, "when you were 4, you fell from the swing set and broke your right arm. You cried all night, not from the pain, but because you were afraid the cast would stop you from drawing." "Olivia," she continued, turning to Rachel, "you slept with a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Carrots. You lost him a week before you disappeared. You cried until I bought you an identical one, but you insisted it wasn't the same because the real Mr. Carrots had a special smell." The twins looked at each other, an unreadable expression passing between them. Pastor Blackwood's grip on their shoulders visibly tightened. "Nonsense!" he snapped. "She could have invented those details or found information about my daughters somehow." But the damage was done. Officer Collins saw the girl's reaction and took a step forward. "Pastor Blackwood, I really think we should continue this discussion at the station, for everyone's sake." The pastor's face hardened. "I'm not going anywhere. These are my daughters, and I will not allow a disturbed woman to take them from me based on coincidences and fantasies." "They're not coincidences," Emily insisted. "And if you're so sure, why are you afraid of a simple verification? What are you hiding, Pastor?" The tension in the church was a physical thing. The parishioners watched in silence, torn between loyalty to their pastor and the seeds of doubt Emily had sown. Some began to recall details like how Pastor Blackwood had appeared suddenly 12 years ago with 2 small girls claiming they were his, though no one remembered ever meeting his pregnant wife. "I have an idea," Officer Collins proposed. "How about a simple test? Ma'am, you said your daughter broke her right arm?" Emily nodded vigorously. "A fracture leaves marks on the bones that can be seen on an X-ray years later," Collins explained. "Yes, Rebecca has that scar, and medical records in Detroit will confirm it," Emily exclaimed. "This is absurd," the pastor seethed, his calm facade crumbling. "I will not subject my daughters to medical examinations based on the ravings of a stranger." His vehemence caused more murmurs to ripple through the congregation. Mrs. Anderson, an elderly woman who had been with the church since before Blackwood's arrival, rose slowly to her feet. "William," she said, her voice trembling but clear, "if you have nothing to hide, why are you so opposed? Let the authorities investigate and clear up this misunderstanding." The pastor looked around, seeing the support of his flock begin to evaporate. His eyes, once warm and fatherly, turned cold and calculating. "Rachel, Rebecca, we're going home," he ordered, ignoring everyone else. But the twins didn't move. For the first time in what felt like their entire lives, they were disobeying him. "What if she's telling the truth, Father?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes I have these dreams of another place, another life." Pastor Blackwood's face contorted into an expression Emily would never forget. Pure, unbridled panic. In that moment, everyone in the room knew something was terribly wrong. "You need to come with us to the station, Pastor," Sergeant Daniels said, his tone now authoritative. "All of you, including the girls." Time seemed to stand still as the pastor weighed his options. Then, in a move so swift it caught everyone by surprise, he shoved the twins aside and bolted for a side door. "Stop him!" Officer Collins shouted. but Blackwood had already vanished down a hallway. The next few minutes were chaos. The officers gave chase while Emily rushed to the twins who had fallen to the floor from the force of the push. She knelt beside them, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Are you all right?" she asked, resisting the urge to pull them into an embrace and never let go. Rachel, Olivia, looked up at her, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Is it true? Are you our mother?" "Yes," Emily answered, tears streaming freely down her face. "I've been looking for you for 12 years. I never stopped looking." Rebecca, Sofía, reached a tentative hand toward Emily's face, as if trying to recall a memory. "Your hair was longer," she murmured, "and you used to sing us to sleep, a song about stars." Emily choked back a sob. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star. It was your favorite." A flicker of recognition shone in Sophia's eyes, a spark of long-buried memory. "And you put extra cinnamon on Olivia's oatmeal, but not mine because I didn't like it." Emily nodded, unable to speak. "But, Father, the pastor," Olivia began, bewildered. "He said our mother died. He said he loved us so much. He told us stories about her every day to keep her memory alive." "He lied to you," Emily said softly. "He stole your real story, your real life." Just then the officers returned, breathless and frustrated. "He got away out the back," Sergeant Daniels reported. "Had a vehicle waiting. We've put out an alert, but he has a head start." "It doesn't matter now," Emily replied, never taking her eyes off her daughters. "They'll find him. The important thing is I've finally found you." As the congregation dispersed under the officer's instructions, Emily and the twins were escorted to the local police station. During the ride in the back of the patrol car, the girls sat on either side of Emily, not quite embracing her, but close enough to feel her presence, as if instinctively seeking to reconnect a bond that had been violently severed so long ago. At the station, a female officer brought them hot chocolate while they waited. The calls to Detroit quickly confirmed Emily's story. The case of the missing Reynolds twins was still open, though cold. The description, the photographs, everything matched. "What happens now?" Olivia asked, her voice small in the sterile waiting room. Emily took a deep breath. "We'll take it one step at a time," she answered with all the calm she could muster. "There will be questions, examinations, probably DNA tests to confirm what we already know. And then we can go home." "Home?" Sofía repeated. "Where is that?" The question pierced Emily's heart like a dagger. These children had no memory of their real home. To them, home was a lie constructed by the man who had stolen them. "Home is wherever we are together," she finally replied. "We can rebuild it anywhere." That night, as authorities processed the incredible situation and prepared for a full investigation, Emily stayed with her daughters in a small local hotel under the discreet watch of an officer. The twins were quiet, processing the monumental revelation that had shattered everything they believed about themselves. "Why did he do it?" Olivia asked suddenly, breaking a long silence. "Why did he take us?" Emily had been waiting for this question, dreading this moment. How could she explain the actions of such a disturbed man to two teenagers who had called him father for most of their conscious lives? "I don't know for sure," she answered honestly. "Some people are very broken inside. They try to fill empty spaces in terrible ways. Maybe he lost a family of his own or never had one and decided to steal ours. But what I do know is that it wasn't about you or who you are. It was about him, what he needed, what he was missing." The twins nodded slowly, not fully satisfied, but understanding that some questions have no simple or comforting answers. "How did you find us?" Sofía asked, changing the subject. Emily managed a sad smile. I never stopped looking. I traveled to every state, followed every lead, no matter how small. And today it was as if something guided me to that church. As if a part of me just knew you were there. The next morning dawned gray and rainy, the sky mirroring the emotional storm raging within Emily and the twins. Breakfast in the hotel's small coffee shop was a quiet affair. The girls picked at their pancakes, stealing furtive glances at Emily, who tried to give them space while her heart ached to hold them and never let go. Officer Jensen will be here to pick us up in an hour, Emily said gently. They want to take your statements. I'll be with you the entire time. Olivia, still getting used to answering to that name instead of Rachel, nodded mechanically. And after that, the question hung between them, heavy with implication. What came after dismantling the elaborate lie they had lived for 12 years? After, Emily replied, choosing her words carefully. We'll have options. We can go back to Detroit where we used to live, or we could start fresh somewhere new. The important thing is that we'll be together. Sofía toyed with a lock of her hair, a gesture Emily recognized from her toddlerhood. Some things, it seemed, not even years of manipulation could change. What about school, our friends? She asked, her voice trembling. Emily's heart contracted. Of course. These girls had entire lives here. Friendships, routines, normal teenage dreams that were now threatened by the truth. We can talk about staying in the area, she offered, at least until you finish the school year. I don't want to tear you away from everything you know all at once. The twins exchanged a look, a silent language Emily remembered well. They had always had that special connection, that ability to communicate without words that had so fascinated her when they were small. He used to forbid us from doing that, Olivia said suddenly. Doing what? Emily asked, confused. Communicating like that? With our eyes. He said it was sinful, that we were shutting God out of our conversation. Emily fought down the rage that swelled inside her. William Blackwood hadn't just stolen her daughters, he had tried to break the unique bond between them, labeling it as something evil. There is nothing wrong with your connection, she said firmly. It's beautiful and it's natural. No one has the right to make you feel bad for it. The twins seemed to relax slightly at her affirmation, as if a small weight had been lifted from their shoulders. At the station, Officer Jensen, a middle-aged woman with kind but perceptive eyes, led them to a special room designed for interviewing minors. It was a deliberately welcoming space with comfortable armchairs instead of the typical metal chairs in interrogation tables. Girls, I know this is incredibly difficult, Jensen began after introductions, but we need to understand exactly what happened over these years so we can build the case against William Blackwood when we catch him. Over the next 2 hours, a disturbing story began to emerge. Blackwood had raised the twins in an atmosphere of suffocating control, using religion as a tool to keep them isolated and dependent. He had forbidden them from having cell phones or using the internet without supervision. Their friendships were limited to the youth from his church, each one carefully selected by him. He said the outside world was full of evil, Sofía explained, that only he could protect us. Sometimes, Olivia added, her voice cracking, when we asked questions about our mother or our past, he'd get so angry he'd lock us in the basement to reflect on our ingratitude. Emily's hands tightened into fists beneath the table as she fought to maintain her composure. Officer Jensen, noticing her distress, offered her the chance to take a break, but Emily shook her head. She wouldn't leave her daughters for a single second, not now. Do you remember anything about your life before? Jensen asked gently. Before living with Blackwood? The twins exchanged another glance. Dreams, Sophia answered. I had dreams of a park with red swings and of a woman who would sing while she gave us a bath. Riverside Park, Emily murmured, a ghost of a memory taking shape. It was 2 blocks from our apartment. The swings were red with silver chains. I remembered a cat, Olivia added tentatively, an orange one with a white paw. Butterscotch, Emily confirmed, tears welling in her eyes. You found him in an alley when you were 4. I begged you to leave him, but you were so stubborn. For the first time since their reunion, a genuine smile touched Olivia's lips. I've always wanted a cat, but he said animals were a distraction from devotion to God. As the day wore on, the authorities gathered more evidence. It was confirmed that no original birth certificates for a Rachel and Rebecca Blackwood existed at the local hospital. The pastor had submitted documents that a specialist quickly determined were forgeries. Meanwhile, photographs of William Blackwood were distributed to every law enforcement agency in the state. His description appeared on local news broadcasts, alongside the astonishing story of Emily's reunion with her daughters. The case immediately captured national attention, with journalists beginning to congregate in the small town of Oak Brook. We'll need to shield them from the media, Jensen warned Emily as they returned to the hotel that evening. This story is going to explode and the 3 of you will become the center of it. Emily nodded, grateful for the concern. I just want them to have space to process all of this. At the hotel, the twins sat together on one of the beds, their shoulders touching as if for mutual comfort. Emily settled into a nearby chair, careful not to invade their space. Can we ask questions? Sophia said suddenly. About before. Of course, Emily replied, her heart quickening. You can ask anything you want. We had a big house, Olivia began, more a statement than a question. Emily smiled sadly. No, honey. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment. You 2 shared a room. We'd painted the walls a pale yellow because Sophia insisted it was the color of happiness. And our father? Sophia asked. The question Emily knew would eventually come. Emily took a deep breath. His name is Richard Kendall. We met when I was working at a coffee shop and he came in every morning. When I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared. He never met you and he never showed any interest in doing so. The twins processed this information in silence. So it was always just the 3 of us, Olivia concluded. Yes, but we were happy, Emily assured them. We had very little money but so much love, and we had plans. I was saving up to take you to Disney World for your 6th birthday. Something in that last sentence struck a chord in Sophia. I like roller coasters, she said softly. He, William, never took us to amusement parks. He said they were places of temptation and frivolity. Emily smiled. You were always the adventurous one. At 4 years old, you wanted to go on every ride at the park, even the ones you weren't tall enough for. The hours passed as Emily shared anecdotes, answered questions, and slowly helped her daughters piece together the puzzle of their true identities. She didn't pretend that 12 years of separation could be erased in a single afternoon. But every small connection, every shared memory was a step toward healing. That night, as the twins finally slept, Emily sat by the window watching the rain. Her phone vibrated with a message from Officer Jensen. Blackwood is still at large. Possible sighting near the Canadian border. We will keep you informed. Emily looked over at her sleeping daughters, their faces so similar and yet so distinct. 12 lost years. 12 years of first days of school, of birthdays, of laughter and tears that she could never get back. Rage threatened to consume her, but she firmly pushed it aside. What mattered now was not the stolen past, but the future they could build together. 3 days later, while the twins were in a session with a psychologist, specializing in childhood trauma. Emily received the call she had been waiting for. William Blackwood had been captured trying to cross into Canada with false documents. "He wants to make a deal," Jensen informed her. "He'll confess to everything in exchange for certain considerations in his sentencing." "What kind of considerations?" Emily asked, her voice like ice. "He wants to avoid the media exposure of a trial. He says he's doing it for the girls, to protect them from public scrutiny." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Always manipulating, even now. What are our options?" "If he pleads guilty to all charges, we'd avoid a lengthy trial. The girls wouldn't have to testify. But the decision is yours, Emily. You and your daughters deserve complete justice if that's what you want." Emily considered what would be best for Olivia and Sofía. A trial would mean publicly reliving the entire horror, exposing every detail of the deception and manipulation. Was the emotional cost worth it? "I need to talk to my daughters," she decided finally. "They're old enough to have a voice in this." That afternoon, sitting in the hotel garden, far from prying ears, Emily explained the situation. To her surprise, the twins had a clear and unanimous answer. "We don't want a trial," Olivia said, speaking for them both. "He already stole 12 years from us. We don't want to give him one more minute of our lives." Sofía nodded in agreement. "We just want to move on, to learn who we really are and who we can be." Emily hugged her daughters, marveling at their strength and wisdom. "Then that's what we'll do." William Blackwood was sentenced to 20 years in prison on multiple charges, including kidnapping, document forgery, and child abuse. His confession included disturbing details: how he had scouted parks in several cities searching for children to abduct, how he had chosen the twins for their beauty and for the opportunity Emily's brief distraction presented, how he had kept them sedated during the drive from Detroit to Minnesota, how he had constructed an elaborate mythology about a deceased wife to explain his sudden fatherhood. A week after William Blackwood's arrest, Emily and the twins returned to the rectory to collect the girls' belongings. Officer Jensen accompanied them for both security and emotional support. The property, a modest Victorian house adjacent to the church, was cordoned off with yellow police tape. "Take your time," Jensen said, unlocking the door with a key provided by the authorities. "I'll be right out here if you need me." Emily hesitated on the threshold. Entering this space felt like an intrusion into the years that had been stolen from her, a glimpse into the parallel life her daughters had been forced to live. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" she asked the twins. Olivia and Sofía exchanged a look and nodded. "We need to close this chapter," Olivia replied, her voice firmer than Emily had heard it yet. The inside of the house was austere, almost Spartan in its decor. White walls were unadorned save for wooden crosses and framed Bible verses. There were no family photographs, no vacation souvenirs, nothing to suggest warmth or personality. "His office is down there," Sofía pointed to a closed door at the end of the hall. "He never let us go in." Emily noticed how the twins avoided using Blackwood's name or referring to him as their father. It was as if they were trying to linguistically distance themselves from the man who had defined their lives for so long. "Do you want me to come up to your rooms with you, or would you rather go alone?" Emily asked, conscious of giving them the space to process. "Come with us," Sofía replied without hesitation, taking Emily's hand. The simple gesture, the first contact initiated by her daughter, sent a wave of emotion through Emily that she could barely contain. The twins' rooms were on the second floor, small, identical, and as devoid of personality as the rest of the house. Single beds with white quilts, unadorned wooden desks, and shelves of carefully selected books, mostly religious texts and approved literary classics. "We had to keep everything neat," Olivia explained as she opened a drawer and began pulling out meticulously folded clothes. There were daily inspections. Emily's gaze swept over the bare walls. He wouldn't let you have posters or pictures? Sofía shook her head. He said vanity begins with images. As the twins packed their meager belongings into suitcases provided by the police, Emily noticed something odd. The wooden floor beneath Sophia's bed looked slightly different, as if one board had been moved repeatedly. "Sofía," she asked cautiously, "is there something under the floor?" The girl's cheeks flushed. With a quick glance toward the door as if checking that they were alone, she knelt and slipped her fingers into a tiny, almost invisible crack. The board lifted, revealing a shallow hollow. "Our hiding place," she explained in a low voice, pulling out a worn shoebox. "If he'd found it." Emily sat on the floor beside her as Olivia joined the small circle. With trembling hands, Sofía opened the box, revealing its contents. Colored stones, clippings from magazines, a small hand mirror, worn-down colored pencils, and 2 homemade rag dolls fashioned from scraps of fabric. "I made them," Olivia confessed, picking up one of the dolls, "from an old shirt he gave us for cleaning rags. Sofía hid them because he checked my room. More than hers." "You were always the rebel." Sofía smiled at her sister. "I was just better at faking obedience." Emily looked at these small acts of resistance with a mixture of pride and pain. Even under Blackwood's oppressive control, her daughters had kept a spark of individuality alive. They had created a secret space where they could simply be children. "You can take all of it," she said softly. "And where we're going, you'll have rooms you can decorate however you want, with posters, pictures, anything you like." The twins smiled, a gesture that still seemed tentative, as if they weren't sure they were allowed such freedom. When they finished packing, they had barely filled 2 medium-sized suitcases each. 17 years of life, condensed into so little physical space. Emily resisted the urge to comment, aware that any observation about their former life could feel like a judgment. As they were leaving the house, Sofía stopped suddenly on the porch. "Wait," she said before running back inside. Minutes later, she returned with something in her hands, a small cactus in a hand-decorated pot. "I planted it 3 years ago," she explained. "He allowed it because he said cacti represent resilience in times of spiritual drought." Emily smiled. "It's beautiful. We'll find the perfect spot for it." As they drove away from the rectory, Emily noticed that neither of them looked back. The following days were a whirlwind of decisions and adjustments. The case had attracted national media attention, with offers for interviews and even proposals for books and movies arriving daily. Emily refused them all, focused solely on protecting her daughters and helping them adapt to their new reality. With help from the authorities and a pro bono lawyer moved by their story, Emily rented a small house on the outskirts of Oak Brook. The decision to remain in Minnesota temporarily rather than return to Detroit was made primarily by the twins. "We don't want to leave school in the middle of the year," Olivia explained. "And our friends, some of them are being really supportive." Re-entering school was perhaps the most challenging aspect. Some families from the congregation, especially those most devoted to Blackwood, regarded the twins with suspicion, as if they were accomplices in their spiritual leader's downfall. But other students, freed from the pastor's influence, showed surprising solidarity. "Melanie and Josh invited us to a party this weekend," Sofía mentioned over dinner 3 weeks after their reunion. "Can we go?" Emily smiled, savoring these small moments of teenage normalcy. "Of course, what time should I pick you up?" The twins exchanged glances. "Actually," Olivia said cautiously, "Melanie's parents offered to drive us home, but we understand if you'd rather do it." Emily considered it. Part of her wanted to keep her daughters close at all times to shield them from a world that had once snatched them away. But another, more rational part knew they needed space to grow, to experience the normal independence of adolescence. "I trust Melanie's parents," she replied finally. "You can go with them. Just text me when you get there and when you're leaving, okay?" The look of relief on the twins' faces was worth more than any verbal thank you. Weekly sessions with Dr. Levine, a psychologist specializing in trauma and family reunification, became a cornerstone of their routine. Emily had initially suggested individual therapy for the twins, but the doctor recommended joint sessions. "The trauma you experienced was shared, and so is your healing process," she explained. "Besides, they need to see you model vulnerability and growth, Emily. They need to know that it's okay to talk about how hard this is for everyone." During these sessions, painful truths emerged. The twins revealed how Blackwood had wielded religion as a weapon of control, threatening them with divine punishment if they dared to question his authority. They described how he had nurtured a subtle competition between them, alternately favoring one over the other to keep them divided. "He used to tell me I was the strong one, the responsible one," Olivia confessed during one particularly intense session. "That I had to watch over Sofía because she was spiritually weak. And he would tell me that Olivia was proud," Sofía added, "that her obedience was just for show, while mine was genuine." Emily listened to these accounts with a growing sense of horror, finally grasping the intricate web of psychological abuse they had endured. It wasn't just that Blackwood had stolen their identities. He had systematically tried to sever the sacred bond between them. "What's astonishing," Dr. Levin remarked, "is that despite everything, you maintained your connection. That shows extraordinary resilience." "We always knew something was wrong," Olivia explained. "We couldn't put it into words, but we felt it." "We had those dreams," Sofía added. "Dreams he called demonic temptations, but now I know they were memories. Of Mom, of our life before." Emily couldn't hold back her tears at this revelation. The idea that her daughters had kept her alive in their dreams, even as Blackwood tried to erase her from their memory, was overwhelming. As the weeks passed, small changes began to surface. Olivia, always the more cautious of the two, started to show an interest in photography after Emily gave her a digital camera for their 18th birthday. Celebrated with a small party that included their new friends. "I like capturing moments," she explained, showing off her first photos. Sunsets, architectural details of local buildings, portraits of Sofía in various moods. "Maybe because we lost so many." Sofía, meanwhile, discovered a passion for music that went far beyond the religious choir. With Emily's encouragement, she began taking piano lessons at the local school. "He only ever let us sing hymns," she said after her first lesson. "Can you believe I'd never heard Beyoncé until a month ago?" Emily laughed, savoring these moments of lightness amid the complex transition. "And what do you think?" "She's a goddess," Sofía replied with such earnestness that they all burst into laughter. These small joys were interwoven with moments of doubt and regression. There were nights when Emily would hear sobbing from the twins' room, now shared by choice, though there was space for them to be separate. There were mornings when the weight of all they had lost seemed to crush them anew. "It's normal," Dr. Levin assured her. "Healing isn't linear. There will be good days and difficult days. The important thing is that they are walking this path together." One Thursday afternoon, as Emily was preparing dinner, she heard an unusually heated argument between the twins. Worried, she approached their bedroom door, debating whether to intervene or respect their privacy. "You can't just erase everything we lived through there," Olivia cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "It was 12 years, Sofía, 12 years that don't just disappear because we know the truth now." "I don't want to erase it," Sofía replied. "I'm just saying we don't have to feel guilty for moving on, for being happy now. Emily held her breath, sensing she was witnessing a crucial moment in her daughter's healing. "I'm scared," Olivia admitted, her voice softer now. "Scared of forgetting who we were, of losing parts of myself again." "We won't forget," Sofía assured her, "but we can choose which parts we carry with us and which parts we leave behind." Emily stepped away silently, her heart filled with a mixture of pain and hope. Her daughters were finding their own way forward, in their own time. Winter gave way to spring in Oak Brook. The snow that had blanketed the gardens for months gradually melted away, revealing the green shoots of a new beginning. For Emily and the twins, this change of season felt symbolic of their own journey. Layers of pain and confusion slowly thawing, allowing new life to emerge. One April morning, as Emily was making breakfast, the phone rang. It was Officer Jensen, whose calls had become less frequent as the case moved toward its legal conclusion. "Good morning, Emily," she said, her tone immediately alerting Emily that something significant had happened. "Are the girls nearby?" "They're just getting ready for school," she answered, instinctively lowering her voice. "What is it?" Jensen paused, choosing her words carefully. "We've been digging deeper into William Blackwood's past, following up on some inconsistencies in his story, Emily. We believe the twins were not his only victims." The spatula Emily was holding fell to the floor with a metallic clatter. "What?" "We found evidence on his computer, photos, documents. It appears that before he took Olivia and Sofía, he attempted the same thing with at least 3 other children in different states. He wasn't successful, but the patterns are unmistakable." Emily leaned against the counter, feeling her legs might give out. "And after my daughters, were there others?" "It doesn't seem so," Jensen replied, "but there's something else. We found correspondence that suggests he didn't act alone in the twins' abduction." "What? Who else?" "A man named Robert Mercer. He was a deacon at the church where Blackwood served before coming to Oak Brook. According to the emails we recovered, Mercer helped plan the kidnapping and provided the false documents." A wave of nausea washed over Emily. The thought that her family's suffering had been the result of a conspiracy, not just the act of one disturbed man, was almost unbearable. "Have you found him?" she managed to ask. "That's the other reason I'm calling," Jensen continued. "Mercer passed away from a heart attack 3 years ago, but his widow, Marion, is still alive. She says she has important information and wants to speak with you." "With me?" "With all of you, if possible. She says she has something that belonged to the twins, something her husband kept all these years." Emily glanced toward the stairs where she could hear Olivia and Sofía chatting as they came down. "I don't know if they're ready for this," she murmured. "I completely understand," Jensen assured her. "Marion isn't going anywhere. Think it over and we'll talk later." When the twins entered the kitchen, Emily tried to keep her expression neutral. But Olivia, ever perceptive, noticed immediately that something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, pouring a glass of juice. Emily briefly considered hiding the information, protecting them from more pain. But the past few weeks had taught her that honesty, however difficult, was the foundation for rebuilding their trust. "That was Officer Jensen," she said, inviting them to sit. "They've discovered new information about him." She explained what Jensen had shared, watching their reactions closely. Sofía grew visibly pale, while Olivia's face became an impenetrable mask, a defense mechanism Emily had come to recognize. "What do you think this woman has?" Sofía finally asked. "The widow? I don't know," Emily admitted. "Jensen didn't give any details, but I want you to know, you don't have to see her if you don't want to. This is your decision." The twins exchanged one of their silent, communicative glances before Olivia spoke. "We want to see her. We need to know." 2 days later, they met in a neutral conference room at the police station. Marion Mercer was a small, frail woman in her 60s, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes heavy with the weight of long-kept secrets. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice trembling as they were introduced. "I've lived with this guilt for years. When I saw the news of your reunion on television, I knew it was finally time to make things right." Emily sat rigidly, trying not to let her rage cloud her judgment. This woman had known where her daughters were and had said nothing. "Why now?" Emily asked, unable to completely hide the bitterness in her voice. "Why not when it happened, or sometime during the 12 years I spent searching for them?" Marion looked down at her wrinkled hands. "I have no excuses that are worth anything, only explanations that sound hollow even to me. Robert, my husband, he kept me in the dark at first. By the time I found out the truth, the girls had already been with William for almost 2 years. Robert convinced me they were better off with him than being returned to a single mother with no resources, as he described you." Emily clenched her fists under the table but remained silent, allowing Marion to continue. "Over the years, I tried to convince myself we had done the right thing. William gave them a stable home, a religious upbringing, a seemingly good life. But I always knew deep down that it was wrong. When Robert died, I found a box he'd kept hidden. It contained this." Marion placed a cloth-wrapped bundle on the table. With trembling hands, she unwrapped it, revealing a worn teddy bear and a small pink backpack with the name Sofía embroidered on it. The twins gasped in unison. Sofía tentatively reached for the bear. "Mr. Buttons," she whispered, stroking his faded fur. "I took him everywhere." Olivia, meanwhile, opened the small backpack. Inside, she found childish drawings, handmade birthday cards, and a framed photograph of the three of them, Emily, Olivia, and Sofía, smiling in front of a Christmas tree. "William took all of their belongings the day he brought them," Marion explained. "He said they needed to forget their old life. Robert saved a few things, I think, out of remorse. I should have turned them over years ago. I know that. I don't expect your forgiveness." Emily watched her daughters examine these fragments of their past, these objects that formed a tangible bridge between who they were and who they had become. The teddy bear she'd bought at a garage sale when Sofía was just 2. The backpack Olivia had insisted her sister needed for her first day of preschool, just like mine. "There's something else," Marion continued, pulling a thick envelope from her purse. "Letters that you sent to different agencies looking for your daughters. Robert somehow got copies. He kept all of them. I think a part of him always regretted it." Emily took the envelope with shaking hands. She recognized her own handwriting, each letter marked with a different date, spanning years of desperation and hope. "Why?" Sofía finally asked, her voice small but clear. "Why did you choose us?" Marion seemed to shrink under the directness of the question. "William, he had lost his wife and daughter in a car accident years before. He became obsessed with the idea of replacing them. He was specifically looking for twins because his daughter had always wanted a twin sister. Robert helped him because he believed he was doing God's work, giving them a true Christian home." Emily felt the room spin, all that searching, all that pain, because one man couldn't process his own grief and another was so blinded by fanaticism that he justified a monstrous crime. "I'm sorry," Marion added, though she knew the words were inadequate. "Robert left a full confession before he died. I've given it to the authorities. It doesn't change anything, but maybe it will help ensure William never leaves prison." A heavy sense filled the room. Emily looked at her daughters, worried how they were processing this new flood of information. To her surprise, it was Olivia who spoke first, her voice quiet but firm. "I can't forgive you," she said, looking directly at Marion. "Maybe someday, but not today, but Thank you for giving us these things back, for giving us pieces of ourselves. Sophia nodded, clutching Mr. Buttons to her chest. I always dreamed about a teddy bear. Now I understand why. The meeting ended shortly after. In the car on the way home, the twins were silent, each holding their recovered treasures. Emily respected their need to process, keeping her own tumultuous thoughts to herself. It was only that night after dinner that Sophia appeared at the kitchen door as Emily was washing dishes. Can I ask you something? She said, still holding the bear. Anything, Emily replied, drying her hands. What was I like? Before, I mean, as a little girl? Emily smiled, guiding Sophia to the living room where Olivia was already sitting, flipping through a photo album they had started creating together. You were a dreamer, Emily began, sitting between her daughters. Always had your head in the clouds. You loved to draw, to make up fantastical stories. You insisted on sleeping with your window open no matter the weather because you wanted to hear the stars talk. Sophia smiled shyly. And did I always have Mr. Buttons? Absolutely. We left him on a bus once and I had to chase it for 6 blocks to get him back. You cried for hours until he was in your arms again. And me? Olivia asked, moving closer. What was I like? Determined. Always the first to try something new. You were fiercely protective of your sister, but also the first one to get her into trouble. Together you were unstoppable? The twins looked at each other, a small smile passing between them at the description that somehow still resonated with who they were now, despite all the years of manipulation meant to change them. I think we still are, Olivia said softly. Unstoppable. Emily felt her heart swell, in that moment surrounded by her daughters, with the fragments of their past reassembled and the future stretching before them like a blank canvas. She knew they were finally, truly on their way home. It wouldn't be a quick or easy process, but they would do it together, one day at a time. The end of the school year was approaching, bringing with it important decisions. For months, Emily had postponed any discussions about long-term plans, allowing the twins to adjust to their new reality without the added pressure of major changes. But now, with graduation just weeks away, the future demanded their attention. One May afternoon, as the three of them ate dinner on the small back porch of their rented house, Emily decided it was time to broach the subject. I've been thinking, she began cautiously, that we should talk about what comes next. Graduation, the summer, where we want to be. The twins exchanged one of their silent, knowing glances before Olivia spoke. We've been talking about it too, she said, setting her fork down beside her plate. We have some ideas. Emily nodded, encouraging them to continue. In these months, she had learned to listen first, to give them the space to voice their thoughts before offering her own. We both got into the University of Minnesota, Olivia continued. Sophia for music and me for visual arts. Emily tried to hide her surprise. She knew the twins had applied to several universities, but they hadn't shared all their options or decisions. That's an excellent university, she commented, processing the information. Minnesota, not Detroit, where she had secretly imagined they might all return one day. Are you sure? There are so many options and we can always consider. We want to stay here, Sophia interjected gently. At least for now. We've built something these past few months. Friends, connections, and our therapist says stability is important for us right now. Emily took a deep breath, recognizing the wisdom in their words. A part of her had secretly hoped they could go back to Michigan to rebuild something resembling the life they had lost. But her daughters were no longer the little girls from her memories. They were young adults who needed to forge their own paths. I understand, she said finally, and I'll support you in whatever you decide. I just want you to be happy. We've been thinking about you too, Olivia added, surprising Emily. It's not fair to ask you to give up your life in Detroit just because we want to stay here. Emily offered a sad smile. What life, honey? I stopped having a life of my own the day you disappeared. Everything I've done since then has been about finding you. It was the raw truth she had never fully voiced. For 12 years, her existence had been reduced to a single mission: find her daughters. She had given up friendships, career opportunities, potential relationships, everything in service of that search. All the more reason for you to build one now, Sofía insisted. Not just for us, for you. The conversation echoed in Emily's mind for days. Build a life. How did a person even do that at 43 after spending more than a decade in a kind of emotional suspended animation? A week later, while scrolling through job listings in Minnesota, having decided that yes, she would stay close to the twins, Emily received an unexpected call. It was Marcus Rivera Jr., the son of the detective who had originally worked their case. "Mrs. Reynolds," he greeted, his voice remarkably similar to his father's. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Emily replied, intrigued. She had met the younger Rivera at his father's funeral years ago, but they hadn't kept in touch. "I've been following your case," he went on. "The reunion with your daughters. It's the kind of ending my father always hoped to see." "Your father never stopped looking for them," Emily acknowledged. "I owe him so much." "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I'm finishing law school and interning with an organization that helps families of missing children. We're hosting a national conference next month in Chicago, and we were wondering if you, and possibly your daughters, would be willing to share your story." Emily was momentarily speechless. The idea of publicly speaking about their experience, of reliving the pain, but also the miracle of their reunion, had never crossed her mind. "I'm not sure my daughters are ready for something like that," she finally responded. "I completely understand," Rivera assured her. "But even if it were just you, your perspective would be invaluable. Your persistence over so many years, how you kept the search alive when others gave up. It could give hope to families who are going through the same thing right now." Something in his words struck a chord with Emily. For years, she had been so focused on her own search that she had rarely considered the bigger picture. Thousands of families living the same hell, many without the happy ending she had finally found. "Let me talk to my daughters," she decided. "I'll let you know." To her surprise, when she raised the idea over dinner that night, the twins reacted with immediate interest. "I think you should do it," Olivia said without hesitation. "Your story could help other people." "Our story," Sofía corrected. "And I want to go with you." Emily and Olivia looked at her in surprise. Of the two, Sofía had been the most private about her experience, the least willing to discuss certain aspects of her life with Blackwood, even with her therapist. "Are you sure?" Emily asked gently. "There's no pressure at all." Sophia's eyes held a new, steely determination. "For years, he controlled our narrative. He told us who we were, what we could say, even what we were allowed to feel. I want to take back my voice." "Our voice." Olivia reached for her sister's hand. "If you go, I go." A month later, the three of them were in a Chicago hotel preparing for the next day's conference. Emily nervously reviewed her notes. Though the organization had assured her it would be an interview format with no prepared speech necessary. "You're more nervous than we are," Olivia observed with a smile, sitting beside Emily on the bed. "And we're supposed to be the insecure teenagers." Emily laughed, grateful for the levity. "I just want to do right by you, by other families." "You will," Sofía assured her from across the room where she was brushing her long brown hair. "You just have to tell the truth. That's all that matters." The next morning, the auditorium was packed with families, law enforcement professionals, social workers, and representatives from organizations dedicated to missing children. From backstage, Emily watched the crowd with mounting anxiety. "Breathe," Olivia whispered, squeezing her hand. Marcus Rivera Jr. took the stage to introduce them, briefly outlining the case before inviting them to join him. As Emily and the twins walked to the chairs set up for them, a reverent silence fell over the audience. The interview began with simple questions about the days before the disappearance. Setting the scene, Emily described her life as a single mother, the emerging personalities of the twins, the normal routine that was shattered in a single moment of distraction. "Many families in this room are living what you lived for 12 years, Rivera said at one point. That limbo of not knowing, that endless search. What would you say to them?" Emily looked out at the audience, seeing in so many faces the same pain she had carried for so long. "I would tell them that hope is sometimes the only thing we have, and it's enough to get you through one more day," she answered, her voice firm. "I would tell them to trust their instincts, to be persistent with the authorities, to not let their case be forgotten, and to remember to take care of themselves in the process because their loved ones will need them to be strong when they come home." When it was the twins' turn to speak, Sofía surprised everyone, including Emily, by taking the lead. "For years, we lived a life that wasn't ours," she said, her voice trembling at first but gaining strength with every word. "We were made to believe we were other people, that our mother was dead, that our only value was in obedience and conformity, but something inside of us never fully accepted that lie." Olivia picked up where her sister left off. "Children are stronger and more resilient than people think. Even under the tightest control, we had small acts of resistance. We shared dreams that we now know were memories. We created hiding places and secret codes. We kept our connection to each other alive, even if we didn't fully understand why it was so important." The audience listened in absolute silence, captivated by the twins' story. Emily watched them, filled with a mixture of pride and awe. She marveled at the strength and eloquence of these young women who, despite everything they had endured, were emerging with such clarity and purpose. When the session ended, a long line of people formed to speak with them. Parents of missing children who wanted to touch Emily's hand, as if her success could be magically transferred. Police officers who promised to review cold cases with renewed vigor. Teenagers and young adults who had been recovered after kidnappings or parental abductions, seeking advice on how to rebuild fractured relationships. That night, exhausted but strangely energized, the three of them had dinner in their hotel room, processing the intensity of the day. "You know what was the most surprising thing?" Sofía commented, unwrapping a sandwich. "How our story actually helped other people. I always thought of what happened to us as something purely negative, something that only caused us harm. But today I felt like it could be transformed into something positive." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "You too transformed it. Your strength, your ability to speak so honestly. I am so proud of the women you're becoming." Olivia smiled, a gesture that had become more frequent and natural in recent months. "You know, I had an idea during the conference. What if we wrote about our experience, not just for us, but for others who have been through similar things?" Emily and Sofía looked at her with interest. "Like a book," Olivia continued, her enthusiasm growing. "We could tell the story from all our perspectives, Mom searching, us living without knowing we were being searched for, and then the reunion and everything that came after." "I like that idea," Sofía agreed. "It could be therapeutic and helpful to others." Emily watched her daughters, a mixture of pride and wonder filling her. Every day, she discovered new facets of these young women, new depths to their resilience and creativity. They were survivors, yes, but they were refusing to be defined solely by their trauma. I think that's a wonderful idea, she said finally, and I think you have a powerful story to tell. 2 years later, the afternoon sun drenched the small backyard of the house Emily had bought on the outskirts of Minneapolis. It was no longer a rental but a permanent home, with roots growing deeper each passing season. From the kitchen window, Emily watched as Sofía practiced piano in the living room. At 20, she had become a dedicated music therapy student, combining her love of music with a profound desire to help others heal through art. Her hair, now cut in a modern bob, swung gently as her fingers danced across the keys. The doorbell rang, announcing Olivia's arrival. Unlike her sister, who had chosen to live at home during college, Olivia had moved into a small apartment near campus, seeking the independence she had craved for so long. Still, Sunday visits were sacred, a ritual none of them dared to break. "I brought pastries," Olivia announced as she walked in holding a box from their favorite bakery. Behind her was Alex, her roommate and close friend, carrying a bag of extra groceries. The music stopped and Sofía appeared in the hall, hugging her sister and warmly greeting Alex. Though they were still physically identical, anyone who knew them could easily tell them apart now. Olivia with her vibrant energy and more urban style, Sofía with her quiet confidence and bohemian preferences. "The special mail came," Emily said, pointing to a large envelope on the dining room table. "I was waiting for you to get here to open it." The twins exchanged excited glances. The envelope bore the logo of Beacon Press, the publisher that had expressed interest in the manuscript they had painstakingly crafted over the last year and a half. "You should open it, Mom," Olivia suggested, nudging the envelope gently toward Emily. "After all, your persistence made all of this possible." Emily shook her head. "We'll open it together, all three of us." With slightly trembling fingers, they tore open the envelope and pulled out its contents. An official contract for the publication of Found, a memoir of loss, search, and rediscovery, along with an enthusiastic letter from the editor. "We are pleased to inform you that after careful consideration, Beacon Press is proud to offer a contract for your extraordinary manuscript," Emily read aloud, her voice catching on the last few words. "The interwoven narrative of mother and daughters provides a unique and powerful perspective on a subject rarely explored with such depth and honesty." Sofía let out a small shriek of joy while Olivia impulsively hugged Alex, who had been her rock during the writing process. "We did it!" Sofía exclaimed. "Our voices will be heard and hopefully they'll help others," Olivia added, ever the practical one even in moments of celebration. Emily watched her daughters, marveling once again at the journey they had taken. The book had been a cathartic process for all of them. Nights of difficult conversations, tears, and painful memories, carefully extracted like embedded splinters that could finally be removed. But there had also been laughter, discoveries, and the strengthening of bonds with each shared revelation. "This calls for something stronger than coffee," Emily declared, heading to the refrigerator to retrieve a bottle of champagne she had been saving for a special occasion. As Emily poured the glasses, the phone rang. It was Marcus Rivera Jr., now an established lawyer specializing in missing children and family reunification cases. "We got the contract," Emily announced without preamble when she answered. "That's fantastic," Rivera replied. "I was actually calling to ask about that and also to make you another proposal." Emily put the phone on speaker so the twins could hear. "The foundation is expanding its family support program," Rivera continued. "We're creating a team of advisors with personal experience in different aspects of missing children cases. I was wondering if the three of you would be interested in participating." The twins exchanged excited looks. Since the conference in Chicago 2 years ago, They had occasionally participated in similar events, sharing their story with other families and professionals. The idea of getting involved more formally was intriguing. What exactly would it entail? Emily asked. Primarily remote consulting, a few annual conferences, and perhaps a mentorship program down the line. What's so extraordinary about their case is that they can offer perspectives from both sides of the divide, the search, and the experience of being found after so long. After scheduling a meeting to discuss the details, Emily hung up and rejoined the others in the living room where Alex had already arranged plates for cake. A published book, and now this, Sofía remarked, accepting a glass of champagne. Who would have ever imagined our story could become something that helps others? I did, Olivia replied with a smile. From that very first conference, I saw how people responded to our honesty, how they found hope in our reunion. Emily raised her glass. To turning pain into purpose, she toasted. To reclaiming our story into new beginnings, Sofía added, tipping her glass toward her mother and sister. Later that night, after Olivia and Alex had left and Sofía had retired to her room, Emily sat on the back porch, gazing at the stars. The night was exceptionally clear, the sky strewn with pinpricks of light that seemed to wink at her knowingly. Her phone buzzed with a message from Officer Jensen, now a close friend. Congratulations on the contract. William Blackwood was denied at his first parole hearing. He'll serve his full sentence. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Although Blackwood had been relegated to a distant corner of their lives, his shadow would occasionally reappear in moments like these, reminders that justice was still running its course. The door opened softly and Sofía stepped onto the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Everything okay? She asked, sitting beside Emily on the swing. Yes, Emily replied, showing her the message. Just closing another chapter, I suppose. Sofía nodded, processing the news in silence before changing the subject. I was thinking about our next family reunion. Do you think Aunt Beth will finally make it out from Detroit? Emily smiled at the mention of her sister, with whom she had reconnected after years of estrangement. She says she will, but you know how she is with flying. Sofía leaned against Emily's shoulder, a gesture that had become natural over time. It's nice having extended family again, people with stories about us when we were little. Emily agreed. People who remind you that you always had an identity, even when they tried to erase it. They sat in silence for a moment, the gentle creak of the swing mingling with the neighborhood's night sounds. Sometimes, Sofía began cautiously, I wonder what would have happened if you'd never found us. It was a conversation they had had before, in different forms, during therapy sessions or in quiet moments of reflection like this one. I think eventually you would have been found, Emily answered with the honesty she had always promised her daughters. Maybe not by me personally, but the truth has a way of coming out, and I think you two, being as smart and perceptive as you are, would have started asking questions, noticing the inconsistencies. The ones we were already noticing, Sofía agreed, but I'm glad it was you who found us, that yours was the first face we saw when the lie began to fall apart. Emily felt her heart swell. These moments, these small acknowledgments of a bond that not even 12 years of separation could break, were treasures she cherished. Me too, sweetie, she thought. Me too. The next morning, Emily woke early to get ready for her job as a support services coordinator at a local community center. It was a job she had found almost by accident, but one that had proven to be a perfect fit for her skills and experience. As she made coffee, her gaze fell upon the framed photograph on the counter, the three of them at the twins' college graduation, beaming under the June sun. Beside it, another older photo, the twins at 5 years old, hugging each other with Emily kneeling behind them, her arms wrapped protectively around them. Past and present, side by side. The family they were, the family they had lost, and the family they had rebuilt. Different, scarred by experience, but whole in its essence. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was too early for visitors. Puzzled, Emily opened the door to find a nervous boy about 16 years old standing on her porch. "Mrs. Reynolds?" he asked, his voice trembling. "My name is Jason. Jason Mercer." Emily froze, the last name echoing in her mind. "Mercer? I'm the grandson of Robert and Marion Mercer," the young man explained, twisting a piece of paper in his hands. "My grandmother told me what happened, what my grandfather did. I've read about you, about your story. I wanted to apologize in person." Emily looked at the teenager, noting his haunted expression, the shame and weight he carried for actions that had occurred before he was even born. "Jason," she said softly, "you have nothing to apologize for. You aren't responsible for your grandfather's actions." "I know," he replied, but I felt like I had to come. I needed to see you face to face and tell you that not everyone in my family is like that. That I'm trying to be different, to do what's right." With a compassionate sigh, Emily opened the door wider. "Would you like to come in for a cup of coffee? I have some time before I have to leave for work." The boy's face lit up with relief and surprise. "I'd like that very much. Thank you." As she led him to the kitchen, Emily reflected on the unexpected turns life continued to take. Circles closing, new connections forming, even in the most unlikely of places. "Scars mark us," she had written in the book's epilogue, "but they do not define us. They are maps of where we have been, not destinations that determine where we are going." And on this quiet spring morning, with a young man seeking redemption for sins that were not his own, and her daughters blossoming into strong, independent women, Emily knew they had found their way, not back to what they were before the tragedy, but forward, toward a life rebuilt with the fragments of the past, but not bound by them. A life found, not merely recovered. A story that continued to be written, day by day, with every small choice made toward healing and hope.